All right, here we go. I think we're rolling on the YouTube side. Let me go ahead and get the recording started on the Zoom side. And I'm not streaming live to Facebook today, although I have a minute to get it going. Welcome, everyone, to another installment of Get a Clue in 52. I've got a couple of seconds here to get things rolling. So let me see if I can get the Facebook side moving. It's 8 o'clock straight up. This is another installment of Get a Clue in 52. Let's see if we can go live on Facebook and add a description. Sure, why not? At Get a Clue in 52. This is going to be tip number 31 overall. 30, not 41, 31. 31 and 31. Big fingers. Start live video. All right, let's see if that rolls. All right, here we go. We're live on Facebook. We're recording on Zoom. We're streaming into YouTube, and we're welcoming, as always, the faithful dyad, Patty and Charlie. Thank you guys so much, as always, for coming on board. 8 o'clock straight up. Welcome to another installment of Get a Clue in 52. It's tip number 31 tonight. That means number 9 in the networking section, but number 31 overall. Why? Because it was set up for 10 tips in 5 categories, but one category had to have 2 extra tips, so I'd have 52. And that was the marketing section. We've already covered that. So now we're into like awkward numbering, but I'm keeping track. And it's tip number 31 overall, number 9, right? So 22 plus 9 is 31. In the networking section, the first section we covered was communication. Second section we covered was marketing, and now we're in the networking section. We're going to close up the networking section next week with tip number 10, and then we're going to move on to sales, and then we're going to close with accountability. Accountability, my favorite. Now, full disclosure, I'm coming off the golf course. I golfed today. I shot horribly on the front 9. Got a little better on the back 9. I'm still a triple-digit golfer. I'm no good, but I love it so much. But anyway, full disclosure, coming right off the golf course and into your living rooms or offices or home studios or whatever I'm coming into, I'm here. All right, so let's go ahead and review some of the tips that we've covered in the networking section. And then we'll read word for word tonight's tip. And then we'll see what Patty and Charlie have to say or ask or share, on and on. So tip number 1 in the networking section is to develop an elevator pitch. I went deeper than that. Don't just develop a pitch, but understand what are the critical ingredients of a pitch. It sets you up for tip number 2, which is repeat tip number 1. Develop more than one elevator pitch. If you understand the essential ingredients of an elevator pitch, you can expand your offering, expand the choices that you have when you meet other people. If this person's doing this and seeking that, but this person's doing that and seeking this, and this person's doing neither but seeking something else, if you're aware of all the promises you have to offer, you might have something to offer everybody, right? Rather than just memorizing one pitch and being stuck in that. I digress. Tip number 3, learn and master active listening skills. There's a typo in the book that will correct for the 3rd edition, which I'm not promising because Patty will hold me accountable. Patty, you will hold me accountable. If I promised it'll be out by January, the 3rd edition, you would hold me accountable. I can't promise yet. I just can't. Not in a position to do it because I'm working on the integrity game. There is a bonus chapter, like the bonus chapter of Get a Clue in 52 is the first chapter of the integrity game, and I'm getting close to halfway through that book, but it's taking longer than I thought. I was hoping I could put out 3 books this year. Ambition is one thing and reality is another. Anyway, I'm going to get at least one of those books out this year. It's going to be the integrity game. If I don't put out a 3rd edition of Get a Clue in 52 until a year and 4 months from now, so be it. I got to get the integrity game out this year. All right, back to the review of tips. Tip number 4, look for synergy. Anything that you do that serves more than one purpose equals synergy. And then tip number 5, look for leverage. It's tools that you bring into the endeavor that give you more power that you would have had without the tools, right? So when you're networking, what are the tools of networking? Are you equipped to have more power, get more production, get more ROI on your networking investments without the tools? All right, tip number 6, positioning is power. We talked about physical positioning in networking events, but what this tip is really kind of about is what comes out of your mouth. Everything that comes out of your mouth puts you in some sort of position. So Charlie is really good at stringing the pearls, and he's like, yeah, you talked about this starting at tip number 1, have an elevator pitch. Tip number 2, 2 elevator pitches, right? Listening so that you know what to say when you finally talk. And positioning is power. Everything that comes out of your mouth puts you in some sort of position. Tip number 7 is probably one of my top 10 tips in the whole book, right? There's 52 tips in here, right? So tip number 7 is just one of my favorites. Master these 7 reversible questions. What I mean by reversible questions is these are questions that you should expect to have answers to. You should expect to be asked these questions. But more powerfully, if you learn how to ask these questions first, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. If you ask these questions, the answers you'll get will let you know which among your elevator pitches, which among your promises, which among your competitive advantages, which among your positioning or positions that you can put yourself in legitimately, right? You want to offer in that moment, right? I digress. So master the 7 reversible questions. Be ready to answer them, but more importantly, be ready to ask them. Ask them first. So then when you answer these questions, it'll speak right into the listening of what you've just heard in response to your asking those questions. Tip number 8 was last week, wasn't it? Follow up and follow through. Didn't we come up with a beautiful Klubi snack about this, Patty? Right? It's like you can follow up without following through, but you can't follow through without following up. You with me on that?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not even looking at notes. Thank you, Patty, for the thumbs up there. And I love the little picture of me taking notes, right? This is me. There's pictures of me in the book. You know, it's funny when you go through a book like this, it's a self-published book, self-authored. I didn't get a ghostwriter for this. It's just me. And so what are the pictures in here all about? Well, I'm trying to show you what kind of life I have. It's a pretty cool life, right? If you want to be a world-class coach that can also teach, consult, train, produce info products, give keynotes, and be hired as a speaker for hire, and weave all of that together in different packages for people and organizations and small businesses, you may want to talk to me. I mean, it's going pretty well. I got to be honest with you. Life's pretty good. And so when you see the pictures in this book, you're going to see me like having a good time, hanging out, like branding wine bottles with, beautiful looking people. I digress. I'm coming off the golf course and I'm having a good time today. Here we go. All right. So 8:07 p.m. Is everybody with me? All right.
Yes, sir.
Here we go. All right. Word for word, tip number 9 in the networking section. We got a full review of the first 8 tips. Tonight's tip number 9, number 31 overall. Tip number 9. And Charlie, you got to be on the ready. Normally you let everybody else talk before you talk, but I would expect you to be first right out of the gates on this one. Because you've wanted to talk about this tip in prior weeks, and here we are. You understand? So I expect you to be ready, but we'll see what happens here. Tip number 9: introduce yourself to the VIPs. This is on page 76 of Get a Klu in 52 second edition. Here we go. The one person in the room likely to know 100% of everybody else in the room is the organizer. Make sure the person that puts on an event knows you are there. Thank them for putting on the event, and even ask if there is anything you can do to help with future events. Even if you already know the organizer, always announce yourself to them. Don't let it be taken for granted that you showed up. Make sure they know their event is something you support with the gift of showing up. They say showing up is half the battle. Make sure the organizer knows that you showed up. If the organizer is number 1, then the guest speaker or special/featured guest of any kind, if there is one, is truly number 1A. Number 1A is the person that the organizer leveraged to get you and others to show up to the event. Do your best to introduce yourself to them or ask a question if a Q&A session is open. Wait in line if pictures are allowed. The work to befriend the guest speaker or special guest is always worth the effort. Networking starts out as a quantity game, parentheses, meet as many people as I can, and becomes a quality game, meet the right people. Identify the VIPs and do the work of positioning yourself to meet and interact with them. That's it. That's tip number 9. Sweet. And, we can go scuba diving and go deeper into all of these tips, but the book isn't about any one of these tips. The book is a collection of tips, and straightforwardly, if you want to know how to position yourself in front of the speakers, the organizers, etc., and just my reading the tip isn't enough, then reach out to us and get some coaching sessions. We offer free coaching sessions, either for myself or coaches that I've trained. We'll be ready to understand your specific circumstance, your specific brand, your specific target audience, and the specific networking endeavors that you should engage in, and we'll prepare you. We'll get you there. Anyway, I digress. Tip number 9, get a clue in 52. 10 minutes in. Are you kidding me? 10 minutes in. We know I've taken longer than that in the past. Let me go ahead and open it up. Patty, Charlie, do you guys have anything to ask or comment on or share as we go ahead and get into open discussion around tip number 9, or anything that you guys want to discuss? I'm going to go ahead and switch it up, get off the headphones, and turn the audio around. So give me a second on that.
Okay.
All right. Woo. Let's turn this thing around. How about that? There we go. All right. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Coach Jeff.
Oh, that's wonderful. I can hear you too, but you're just not loud enough. All right. How about now?
Okay. Now we can hear you loudly.
Go ahead, Charlie. You want to kick us off? Do you have any comments on tip number 9 from the networking section, or 31 overall, and get a clue in 52?
Yeah. Attending networking events, as again, which I like to string all the tips together. But one of the little arts that you should have is research as much as you can about who the speakers, number one, who's hosting the event, etc. And the first thing you do when you arrive at an event, obviously, you got to be registering. Open rapport with the people at the front desk. That is where you kind of get to know who is there, and also ask them who would be the right people to get introduced to. Now, some of the speakers and VIP people are sat in sort of maybe secluded areas. Ask them if they could maybe introduce you to one or two of the people. And I can tell you it's more than likely they're willing to do that. Again, the energy that you bring to the room, and also the way you carry yourself, introduce yourself to them, tell them a bit about you and the questions that you ask, kind of gives them the interest that they want to get you to those people.
Yeah, you know what? Let me go ahead and jump in here real quick and add to what you're sharing, Charlie. Is that okay?
No, you may, Coach. Okay.
What I'd like to add to that, Charlie, what I'm hearing you saying so far, and I'm going to give the floor back to you in a minute, but what you're saying so far is at the reception, at the front desk, the gatekeeper, the check-in. Yes. When you check in, there's somebody employed or working or volunteering in that position. And they were, again, to the point that I'm making in the book, the organizer of the event knows 100% of the people at the event, including who's checking you in or writing your name badge or what have you, right? So instead of, you didn't say it this way, Charlie, because you're such a diplomat and you're such a gentleman, but let me go ahead and say what you didn't say. Instead of treating those people like peons, right? Are you with me? Right? They treat them as vital, treat them as important. They're critical. Yes. They are the directors of, how should I say this? I'm plugging in so I can get some more battery here. They're the directors of first impression. They're gatekeepers. Yes. They're right. Now, if you as an attendee can help them understand how important their role is, we would hope that whoever's employing them has already done that for them,
Yes.
right? But if we come in and we validate, like, you know what, you're playing one of the most important roles in the entire event here, right? I'm on and on. So there's ways to befriend the gatekeepers to find out, hey, how many events have you done? How long have you been working with the organizer? Did you just come on, or is this your 18th event in a row? Like, we can start asking those reversible questions to even the person that's giving us a name badge.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we can find out, right? So that's a great place to start. So I want to validate that. Don't wait until you're in the room. Don't overlook an opportunity to treat everybody as important. Anybody that the organizer has on site is important. And the organizer made that decision or put somebody in position to make that decision. So everybody participating, staffing an event has some gateway of entry to the organizer, somehow, some way. So you want to start there. What I want to add to what you were saying, Charlie, right? This is the Klubeckian ad, right? And this is for you and everybody else that may be listening right now, is the because. In other words, I'm going to encourage you. This isn't a tip in the book, but it may show up in the 3rd edition of Get a Clue in 52. Develop because statements. Now, here's where I'm coming from on this. There was a psychological study that was done that they sent some random person into a grocery store 100 times. I don't know the exact numbers, but stay with me on the general idea of the study. Are you guys with me? Because I'm not consulting notes and books, okay? Right? So they sent a guy, stay with me on this. They sent a guy into a grocery store 100 times with the instructions, cut in line. Like, just go, like, there's people waiting in line to check out, go into the grocery store, cut in line. Go as close as you can and say, hey, I need to cut in line. Hey, I need to cut in line. Hey, will you let me in line? Like, there's some version of, I need to cut in line, will you let me in line? Something like that. And then they monitored how many times out of 100 would they be permitted to versus told to screw off and go to the back of the line, right? Okay, are you with me on this? Thank you for laughing. Yeah. Right, I see. Okay, thank you. Right? So guess what? That was the control group, though, right? Or whatever, the experimental group. Then they sent the person back for another 100 times, and they say, use because I'm in a hurry, because I need to go, because somebody's waiting, because I only have a few items, and what the study ended up showing was it didn't matter what came after because. It didn't matter if I've got a child in the car waiting for me, or I'm double parked, or I need to get this to the hospital to a family member, or I'm late for work. It didn't matter what came after because. What the study found was, as long as there was a reason for what you were asking, the chances go way up. So now let's combine this knowledge to what Charlie was saying in this. It's like, hey, could you introduce me to the organizer? Could you introduce me to the guest? Because I have a promise, I have a competitive advantage. I have a promise and I have a competitive advantage. It goes back to what I was teaching earlier. So if you know your elevator pitch and you can amend it to a because statement, then when you ask the gatekeeper to introduce you to the organizer, if you just say, hey, could you introduce me to the organizer?
Yeah,
but if you say, hey, can you introduce me to the organizer because I have a promise and I have a competitive advantage? Oh, and by the way, as the gatekeeper, you'll probably be thanked for identifying people with have extra value. So you might get praise for introducing me if I'm right about my promise and my advantage. So I'm validating. Don't bypass the gatekeeper in the registration booth, right? But don't ask them for anything without a because statement. And that because statement's got to be legit. And it's got to be a promise that you can make and a competitive advantage that you can back up that promise with. That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Continue, sir.
Yeah, and most of the time, sometimes the volunteers and so forth, they says, well, I might be new here, but let me call someone else, And most importantly, always make them realize that how much they are being appreciated for being there, for doing what they are doing in welcoming you, etc. Many instances as well, some of the new ones and the older ones who might know me that I've attended a previous event that they have done as well, they'd actually come and introduce the new lot to me. With the organizers as well, I'd probably get introduced to the main organizer, and she could spot me over the room, and then they'd come running over and then says, "Oh no, come! I want you to meet this person," because that is where you get to build relationships, even if you have not asked to meet a specific person. They might even identify for you as well that no, this is the right person for you to, I'd like to.
Yeah. As you've had the benefit of repetition, like, hey, nice to see you again. You know what I do, right? Who should I be talking to tonight? It's wonderful if you have that type of rhythm and that rapport with someone that you see over repetitive engagements. Let me go ahead and just make sure everybody knows what they're doing. Let me say hello to Gino Grio out there. If you're still watching, the Facebook says that you are a former student of mine who's active on social media and life in general, a lover of life, and one of my favorite students from back at San Diego City College. Thank you for coming on board, Gino. Patty, you're on mute right now, but I've seen you twist and turn a little bit, and I want to see if you have anything to add tonight before I yield the floor back to Charlie.
Well, one of the things that I love about coming on is hearing you tell us things. And I love that story about asking because.
Right.
Because when you add the reason that you need to do something, then you become relatable to the person that hears that because they've been in similar situations, etc. So that's something that stuck out to me. And then when Charlie started adding his talk about, being grateful and making the gatekeeper feel appreciated, it's really important. And I just wanted to emphasize that I felt it was very important.
Yeah, to back up, let me add to both of those things that you're sharing, Patty. Number one, the because, right? It in addition to making us relatable, because maybe they can relate to the why, right? It shifts from you are a victim, I'm cutting in front of you, to now you are a helper. That's huge, right? If I just say, hey, can I cut in line? Now you're being victimized. Does that make sense? But if I say, hey, can I cut in line because my underage child is in the car sleeping and I didn't want to wake him up just to come into the store to get this one thing. Right. Now that person's in a position to help. What a shift, right? So I want to add that. And then the other thing, to what Charlie was talking about, when you can make the gatekeeper or the person at the registration booth feel important, what came up for me was my wife. I can hear her voice in the other room right now. When I was a young college student, I was the student representative. Get this, stay with me. I was the student representative for the San Diego chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. You want me to say that again? I was the student representative for the San Diego chapter of the National Academy of NATIS, National Academy of Television Arts and Science. So they give out awards like the Globe, and they're like, right? The NATIS Awards, right? Like for television excellence in San Diego chapter. Well, guess what I had to do as the student representative? I had to, when I was in my third year of college or second year of college, right? I had to go get a tux, and I had to clean up. And I was like the big shot. Hey, Marianne, you want to play dress up and come with me when I do my duty as the student representative? And of course, she took so much time getting ready that we were late, of course, right? Because it was all about her and how she looked rather than me getting there on time. Never mind that like 20 years later, I still haven't let that go. Never mind, right? Like, honey, it's about me being on time for my thing, not about how you could wear a paper bag, you'd look fine. No, I got to wear this. I got to do. My dilemma. My wife is so beautiful. All right. But my point is I sat there and I registered people, Charlie. I checked people in. You know, it was my job to, you know what I mean? So when I go to networking events now and I do exactly what you're telling us to do, hey, thank you for being up front. Thank you for checking me in and making sure I know what to do here and where I'm at and the whereabouts of it all. You know, when I was in college, I had to check people into like this fancy shindig one time. I was nervous beyond belief. My then girlfriend, now wife, was making me nervous beyond belief. And I got to tell you something. I really appreciate you being here and getting us all organized and straight. By the way, I'm here because, and I can do this, and I say that because, and if there's a chance for me to meet the organizer or the speaker, I would love that. Is that something that you can make happen, or who would I ask for that? Who would I talk to make that happen? Right. So I do the because, I become relatable. I remember a story from my life where I was doing what they were doing, and now I've got a much better chance of being introduced than if I was just some entitled schmuck that said, "Hey, who's the organizer? I don't need to check in. I should be on the." You've seen it all, right? I digress. Patty, do you have anything else to add?
Well, the same benefit of that, although you do it differently, whoever the VIP is that you get introduced to, they also feel elevated because someone is actually seeking them out.
Yeah.
You know, so it's all about appreciation, I think.
Yeah, and the spirit of networking. You know, what I count on, I don't count on, there's no obligation, Charlie, but what I expect Charlie to bring up for us is the caution we must take, right? In protecting our reputations, protecting the reputation of others, of screening properly. You know, everybody wants to network and be introduced, but there's a care we must take in making sure that we're being introduced to people that we will either be productive for or that will be productive for us, or ideally both, right? Anything else? We're in tip number 31 overall, tip number 9 from the networking section of Get a Klu in 52. I'm joined as always by Patty from Chicago and Charlie from South Africa, and Gino maybe somewhere in San Diego. I'm not necessarily sure. Whoever's watching a recorded version or a replay, just thank you guys to tuning in. We hope we're providing value. Let me go ahead and reach out for some sort of last call for comments, questions, anecdotes, tips, suggestions, jokes, or anything for tonight's installment of Get a Klu in 52. Patty, Charlie, do you guys have anything else?
Well, you know what Charlie's going to ask you.
Ooh, yeah, that's right. Oh boy, I think
I'm preempting him.
God, I think we're really like getting ready now.
Well, that one was going to come a little bit later. But just to recap on that one.
He's going to add more. Okay, go, Charlie.
Let's go, Charlie. Let's go. Okay.
You know, as you mentioned, is what do you protect? Not only yourself, but also the VIP or the person that you're wanting to connect somebody to. We will just drive back again. Again, these tips interlace with each other so well that if you are asking the right questions, right, and having your proper elevator pitch, listening properly to what the person wants or is saying, then you will already identify that, oh, this might be the right person to introduce to Coach Jeff, but they might not really be ready yet. I need to do some more work.
By the way, don't introduce me to anybody that's not ready, because I'm the real deal over here. If you're not ready to change your behavior, you're not ready for me.
Yeah, you get what I mean? So,
yeah.
So that is where you follow up and then follow up with them and see exactly what is it that you want. Then you can make that introduction. But then if you've been listening attentively to what somebody else has been saying and you're speaking to someone else, you could, okay, that would be a good match. I'm not really the expert in that field, but what you are actually seeking, the gentleman in the blue jacket over there might be able to help you. So that's the person you need to go and speak to. And then also the other part is, again, positioning yourself at an event. I love the first 3 rows up the front and directly in line with that stage in the middle so that I can be making eye contact and connecting with the speaker. More than likely, when he's done, he'd actually be looking for me before I look for him to try and get to connect with him. Because again, it's the energy you bring in. Be, as you mentioned, be part of the Q&A. That way you start building immediately you start connecting with them, and then the relationship starts getting built from there.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. That's awesome. I didn't hear a question there, so I don't feel like a
no. It was just
you're right on point. I will say I don't like arguing with you, Charlie, because you're so spot on all the time. But is like I will say this: the first 3 rows are my favorite too. When it depends. There's been events where I'm both there because I want to see who's speaking, but I'm also a speaker there. So if I'm a speaker at an event, it doesn't do me any good to sit in the first 3 rows. I have to position myself consistently in the room or about the room or in the hallway with how people saw me on stage. So it depends, right? There's always, you have to understand the entire context, right? I like the first 3 rows when everybody at that event is doing better than I am. You know what I mean? Like, and where, like, I'm not at the same level of the speaker. I'm not above the speaker. I'm there to, if I'm there and the reason I'm there is to learn from that speaker, I want to be as close as I possibly can.
Absolutely.
What you're talking about also is if you do a good job of the gatekeeper, you say, hey, look, I know that the guest speaker is coming on around 9:45. The reason I got here at 8:15 was to thank you for the great job that you're doing and make sure that you understand what my promise and competitive advantages are. I would love to have 3 minutes with the speaker before they go on. That gives you 1 hour and 15 minutes to introduce me to them.
Yeah.
And if I can meet the speaker before they speak, then I don't want to sit in the first 3 rows. Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying there's times where the first 3 rows are valuable, but there's times where you need to try to, or I try to, or where other people might try to position themselves in a way other than a student of the speaker, maybe a peer or maybe a superior. It depends on what your promise is and what your competitive advantage is. If your promise is, I'll be the best student you ever had, and if you accept me into your course, I will not only pay for it and be the best student, but I'll make sure other people have an ROI and I'll be one of the leaders in your organization, right? It depends on what you're trying to promise that speaker, right? If I want to be their best student, I'm going to spit in front of the first 3 rows. If I want to do a joint venture with them, I have to position myself that I'm as good or better than them. So it depends to that. You follow?
And something that you mentioned earlier is, getting there early and getting introduced to the speaker before he goes on stage. It's happened a couple of times to me as well. And like with organizers, it's all about building that relationship with the organizers. Like as in last year, I got invited to a very high-end invitee only awards event by the event organizer. She actually phoned me and said, Charlie, I've got a special invite for you. So if it had not been that relationship, where would we be sat? And I've connected her to 1 or 2 speakers that she's got.
This is what I did to my point. At the event that you were invited to speak at, it probably wasn't as important to you to sit in the first 3 rows when other people were speaking.
No. She invited me to an event that was invited guests only.
Which I thought you were speaking
awards. For me to have gotten invited there, it's, like very high level and so forth, but I got the invite. And if it hadn't been for the relationship, I wouldn't have been invited there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I've also spoken at events where the people that were in the first 3 rows paid to be in the first 3 rows.
Mm-hmm.
They paid a premium to be there, that they were roped off and it was secluded for people that paid extra money. So I don't know if that meant anything to me or not. Does that make sense? So, it goes back and forth. I just want to say that if you're there to learn from the speaker, and that's what your job is, and that's what you want to do, that's your primary, first 3 rows, and if you want to learn from and meet the speaker, I got to tell you something. To your point, Charlie, I took my wife to a Lenny Kravitz concert, and we happened to get tickets in the first row. And I sat back and watched my wife dance in front of Lenny Kravitz for 87 minutes. And then the very last song, when the band was playing, and then he came out in the crowd after, when he got to my wife, you bet your bottom dollar, Lenny gave my wife a hug because he saw her dancing and paying attention, and he knew he was into it. So when he walked by, first of all, my wife is hot, right? So Lenny's an idiot if he doesn't hug my wife when she walks by. But on top of that, right, she's not just hot, she was into it, and she communicated that she was into it by sitting up front, paying attention. There's a lot of people that were sitting up front, but on their phones, are trying to record the show on their phones rather than just paying attention and enjoying. And Marianne had a phone put away, she was dancing and locked in Lenny. And I could send you the video. It's so funny because my wife almost broke my nose with her elbow when she was reaching it. I digress. It's fun for our family. Anyway, anything else? Get a Klu in 52. Here we are. 836, tip number 31 tonight, number 9 in the networking section. You want to introduce yourself to the VIPs, very important people. And it's not just the speaker or the organizer, but Charlie, you're making a great point. The gatekeeper and everybody in between. It could be the custodian. It could be the person that owns the building. It could be the security guard downstairs that lets people in.
Maybe even the waiters.
Everybody's very important if you take the time to learn what their importance is.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
Is that a Kluby snack for tonight?
No, that's cheating.
Here we go.
It could be.
Let me say it again. Everybody is important if you take the time to learn what their importance is. Everybody's a VIP.
Charlie's writing that one down fast. You can see it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I think I see smoke coming up the screen from how fast you're writing, Charlie.
Yeah.
And by the way, that just saved my favorite one. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we had a good one in store, Patty, a really good Kluby sec. I'm looking at it right now. It emerged, but if I don't have to let it out of the bag, I'll save it for later. You'd agree? Save it for later.
I'll have a bonus on you. You owe me a couple.
Okay, join us next week for tip number 32 in Get a Klu at 52. We will be live at 8 o'clock Pacific time every Sunday night. Feeling all right. And I'm going to go ahead and ask for last call tonight. Last call. Comments, questions, additions, suggestions, jokes, anecdotes, wins, celebrations, joviality.
Oh, I have a joke.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, did you hear about the restaurant on the moon?
I did not.
The food was good, but the atmosphere was nil.
That's like a dad joke.
I know it is.
Okay, all right.
But I heard it and I go, okay, he's always asking for jokes.
Right.
So tell Dad a joke.
All right. Well, there we go. We're jovial all the time here and Get a Klu in 52. 8:38 p.m. Anything else? Charlie, anything else? Patty, anything else before we wrap up and seal it with a kiss?
No, just to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I love you guys so much. Thanks for coming on board, making this interactive and dynamic. I would just read a tip right into the camera and talk as if I was talking to a million people anyway if you weren't here, but it's so much better that you guys are here. Oh my God, look what you have in your hands, Charlie. Oh my goodness, it looks so good. Wait, come closer to the camera.
It's because of his background.
There it is. Closer to the camera. Anyway, he's got the first edition in his hands. He's got the whole first edition in his hands. All right, here we go. Let's see them with a kiss. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Mwah. Oh yeah. Mwah. Mwah. All right. I love you all. Get a Klu 52 is out for tonight. We'll see you next Sunday night. And Patty, I'm sure I'll see you sooner for either Klu Zoos or anything else we're doing together. Charlie, I love you. Thanks for coming on board religiously.
Love you too,
I love you, my
Jeff.
friend. We'll see you soon. Good night.
Good night.
Right, have a great week. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you.